chance to end this. Kill them.
Welcome everyone, this is the Longbow Soulbeast. This is an assassin build with very high damage. It's a variant of the meta Longbow Soulbeast build. It has more damage and it has an unblockable burst. The unblockable burst is on a 30-second cooldown, which matches your Sikkim cooldown, so you can pretty much, every burst is unblockable, and obviously every 60 seconds when you burst, that's up as well. And that is your more powerful burst, is using one wolf pack. I'll quickly show the burst and then I'll start going over the build. Looks like this guy might attack my heavy golem. Let's move over to another heavy golem. Let's go over here. Alright, so the burst is just to use one wolf pact, Sikkim, your unblockable signet, point blank shot to knock back the target, and then rapid fire. This build takes the smoke scale. The main things to note are that you have smoke assault, which is a powerful damage ability with an evade, meaning you can go into melee range and use this and you'll be safe from taking damage. And then worldly impact. Smoke assault will also port you to the target, making it easier to land worldly impact. These two abilities are what make the smoke scale so powerful, in addition to the fact that it is a ferocious pet, meaning when you merge you get power. The other uses for the pet involve its ability. We'll cover those at the end of the video. And one more thing to cover with the pet now is that most pets have trouble getting to the target. The AI is not good for pets in this game, sadly, but the smoke scale can teleport, making it connect much easier with the target. So as you can see, it ported to it fairly quickly. So this is just the most reliable pet. You can sometimes unmerge to have it finish kills for you, and it's going to do that much more reliably than the other pets. Now getting into the build. So we take Berserker Amulet, which is your offensive power stat amulet, and we're taking Scholar Runes. Scholar Runes have a damage modifier when you're above 90% health. You're going to be above 90% health when you're bursting. You'll also need to be at a high health to burst because of other traits that you'll see later. On the longbow, we're also taking 2 damage modifiers. We take the Sigil of Separation, which gives you 5% extra damage when targets are more than 500 units away, and the Sigil of Exploitation, which gives you 5% extra damage when the target is below 50% health. This will only be in effect for part of your burst, or in some situations when the target is already low, so you could swap this one out. We're not taking Intelligence on the longbow because we're going to open on the target in the longbow. This is a very simple build where we're mostly just opening on the longbow and hoping to get a kill. So we're not running Intelligence. Intelligence would not proc in that case. On the other hand, we will sometimes swap into Greatsword to finish off our target. Therefore, Intelligence would proc, and we can get some nice mauls. and therefore the target is also very likely to be below 50% health. So you'll get a lot of value out of this exploitation sigil. You could of course go for defensive sigils here, but we're going for a full burst assassin build, so we're just trying to have fun and go for as much damage as possible. For the traits, we'll be taking the marksman trait line over the meta trait line, which is wilderness survival. This is a bit more offensive than the wilderness survival meta trait line for the longbow soulbeast build, but works well with our signets, giving us signets that are on cooldown similar to Sikkim, which allows us to have unblockable burst every time we go to burst. In addition, it gives you a little bit more damage on your burst, as well as piercing longbow shots. This is the easier variant of the build, which makes your burst easier to secure. So starting to go over the traits, opening strike gives you 5 stacks of vuln on the target. This will give you a little bit more damage, 5% more damage when you're bursting. For the first trait, we're taking Lesser Signet of Stone. This is an invuln that procs when you hit 50% health. You'll only get this once or twice per game, but you will get more value out of this, or at least I do in my experience, than these other 2 traits, because we're not staying in combat long enough to get value out of something like Hunter's Gaze, and we're also not staying in combat long enough to be swapping in and out of beast mode, and therefore we won't get tons of value out of the Lesser Call of the Wild as well. This gives you minus 50% movement speed on the first target you hit when entering combat. This procs with opening strikes. The next trait we take is Brutish Seals. This gives you a reduced cooldown on your unblockable signet, as well as giving you Fury on your unblockable signet. The Fury uptime is nice, and it's great to just have Fury on our burst every time without any finesse. It's just hitting a button. So this is the easier to play variant of the build than the meta version, because it just has Fury on its burst and because your burst is unblockable. The next minor trait is to get 100% crit on your opening strikes. The Grandmaster trait we take is Lead the Wild. You'll notice in the footage that I took quickly before shooting this, I'm taking the Remorseless trait. That was an accident. Don't take this trait. You definitely want to take Lead the Wild. This makes your projectiles pierce. It's very common for a pet or a clone or just something other than your main target you're trying to burst to body block the shots. This guarantees your arrows hit the target, so assuming they're not line of sighting you. So this is definitely the trait you want to take. You won't get nearly as much value as you would think out of the top 2 Grandmasters. The reason for that is opening strikes, if you were able to get that on your rapid fire, would only affect 1 or 2 of the shots. In our case, you would get 2 shots that it would affect, because you would get point blank shot would give you Fury, which would proc opening strikes, and your Brutish Shield could give you Fury, proccing it again. So at most, if you take this trait, you could get 2 opening strikes out of all of the rapid fire hits. So, and this hits 10 times, right? So you're not going to, it's not going to make rapid fire's damage 25% higher. It's only going to make some of the, like 1 or 2 of those shots hit for 25% more. So you wouldn't get much value out of this. It doesn't increase the entire damage of rapid fire. Predator's Onslaught, the same thing. You still won't get the full value out of this because the target won't be disabled for the entire duration of rapid fire. In some cases it may, right? If the target is feared from a necro or something like that for the entire duration, but you're probably not going to get the entire 15% of rapid fire, the entire duration of rapid fire up by 15%. So you won't get nearly as much value out of these 2 traits as you would think. So this is the way to go. You also, in some cases, will hit a target over 1200 yards in proc quickness, which is great to have. The rest of the build is pretty much the meta Soulbeast build, but I'll go over why I chose certain traits and why these are part of the meta build. So the Beastmaster trait line is a part of this Longbow Soulbeast build and the meta Longbow Soulbeast build, mainly because of the additional ferocity you get. This first minor gives you 75% more stats when merged in beast mode. This trait gives you 150 ferocity while merged in beast mode. And for the Grandmaster, this is not the meta choice, but I choose this Grandmaster to get an additional 120 ferocity while in beast mode. I'll go over each trait individually now. So for the first trait, we're taking Resounding Timber, which gives you a reduced cooldown on your commands. We take 2 commands. We take Sick'em and we take Protect Me. You'll see that brings Sick'em down to 28 seconds and Protect Me down to 32. This is nice because all of our utilities are basically on a 30-second cooldown. So we have both our defensive and our offensive utilities ready every time we burst. The next trait is Two-Handed Training. This increases the damage by 10% of greatsword skills, as well as reducing the cooldown by 20% of greatsword skills. This also gives you Fury on knocking back the target. So the extra Fury uptime is mainly where we'll gain value here, but you get a bit of value on your greatsword as well. And for the Grandmaster, the reason I take this one for the extra 120 ferocity here, as small as that is because lessening Quickening Zephyr requires a lot of finesse. This requires you to get in combat before you do your burst, which it definitely requires more finesse. A lot of new players on Soulbeast will just mess up their burst altogether because they're trying to get this. It also requires you to get in combat, which gives your target a bit more time to react, where sometimes in games it's more effective to just come out of nowhere and burst your target from out of combat. So I don't, in my experience, get as much value out of this as I do from just having a bit of extra damage. You could also take Beastly Warden to taunt foes on landing Worldly Impact, but most of the time, by the time I land Worldly Impact, I've already killed the target, so I'm not getting a ton of value out of this. But you could play around with this build as well. For the Soulbeast trait line, for the first trait, I take Live Fast, which is to gain quickness on using your Beast ability. That would give you quickness upon using Worldly Impact. It also gives you Fury. The Fury uptime is nice. The quickness, you may get value out of that if you're still auto-attacking after Worldly Impact. Again, not tons of value here because usually the target's dead by the time you Worldly Impact. The other 2 traits, Fresh Reinforcements, you won't get any value out of this because you don't have a lot of boons with this build, so this is basically 0 value. You would not take this trait. This other trait is definitely a viable option, potentially even the better option. If you have more experience playing Soulbeast, this is probably the way to go, because you will sometimes be exiting and entering beast mode when you're trying to get out of a bad situation. So you may be able to get value out of this. This is requires more finesse. If you're looking for just a simple build, I would definitely recommend Live Fast. That Fury time is also great because it synergizes with the next minor, which is to get 7% more damage while you have Fury. And I'm just going to touch back on other traits. We do get Fury again for knocking back the target, which could be either a Longbow 4 or Greatsword 4. And we also get Fury from activating our Signets, in addition to gaining Fury on using Worldly Impact. So there's a couple sources of Fury in this build. The next trait gives you 20% damage reduction while having protection, and you'll often have protection when you're in a bad scenario, and that's because our Sunbreak, Protect Me, gives you protection. So a common scenario would be you go into melee range and you get feared from a Necro, as well as you get a bunch of condies thrown at you. Maybe they transfer all the condies onto you that are in the main fight. So you'd use Protect Me to break the fear. You'll be taking some damage in the meantime. You could use your heal, Bear Stance, which would remove condies, but it removes 2 condies every second for 5 seconds, so it is a lot of condi removal, but it's over time, right? So you're going to be taking some damage in the meantime from condies, so it is nice to have that conditioned damage reduction. These other 2 traits are not very effective for this build. This gives you a duration increase on other boons when you gain quickness. You could use this and get some duration increase on Fury, but not a ton of value from this. You could also take Predator's Cunning. This wouldn't give you any value in this build because we don't have any poison application. This is just showing you that you gain an additional damage bonus when you disable a foe. And the Grandmaster here, Oppressive Superiority, gives you 10% damage bonus to foes at a lower health percentage than you. So this goes with the Scholar Rune in the sense that you essentially need to be at high health to do your burst and to get as much damage as possible. The other traits are Leader of the Pack, which would make it so stance skills have increased durations. And this doesn't give you too much of a benefit, right? Because we would get a bit more out of our one wolf pact, but if we're using one wolf pact, we're probably getting a kill by the time this ends. And you get a little bit more utility out of bear stance, but not a ton of value here. And the other Grandmaster trait is pretty much useless. No one really runs this on Soulbeast builds in PvP, which is just it saves you when you get down, sort of like the there's a couple abilities like this in the game where you go down and instead you gain some health, but really not a ton of value. It's not much health, right? 3,000 or 4,000 health here. You're probably just gonna die soon after that, so this is essentially not taken on any Soulbeast builds. So those are the traits. I'll quickly go over some other choices. I showed you the pet earlier. The pet is nice because it ports to the target. It also has very nice merged abilities. It has the Smoke Assault ability, which is an attack while evading that does lots of damage and synergizes well with one wolf pack. The reason to unmerge with your pet would be to gain stealth. You may do this before entering a fight or to leave a fight. Here's an example. You could use your leap finisher, Worldly Impact. You could also leap using your great sword. So those are two ways to get stealth. And the other aspect of the build to know about is Hunter Shot is another way to gain stealth. And it's a projectile, so people can evade it. Sometimes they just accidentally evade it or accidentally block it, or they just happen to get Aegis. So one way to make it more likely that this lands is when a target's approaching you in melee range, to use it right as you pass through the target to get stealth. Here's a clip where I don't want to be in melee range with this Reaper, so I quickly longbow 3 and get out of a bad situation. This clip is also an example of how to unmerge with your pet, use its ability, and Greatsword 3 into the smoke field to gain stealth and quickly get out of a bad situation. This is an unranked match on the Longbow Soulbeast. This is in Stronghold, and there are some new players on the enemy team, so there's a lot of one-shots and there's not too much strategy for me to comment on, but this is all I was able to capture today. If you liked this video and you like this type of content, please remember to like, subscribe, or give me a comment down below. Any of those three things will help promote my channel and help it grow, and they just let me know that people actually are looking for this type of content. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.